Hey viewers, today I'm going to show you how to create unique rows from selected columns. So if you look at this data, it's product sales broken down by retailer, product and state. Now what if you wanted to create a unique list of retailer product combinations or product state, or perhaps retailer and state, which are not consecutive columns? So the first thing that comes to mind is to use the unique function. I'm just going to hide some of these columns to give us a bit of room. So you go equals unique, open bracket, and select the retailer and product data. And that works, gives us what we want. However, there are a couple of issues. First of all, we've hard-coded the from and to rows. If our data set changes, you have to modify the formula, so it's not dynamic. Secondly, what if we wanted unique retailer and state? Right? If I extend this to the state column, we end up with the product in between. Also, it's going to be unique across the three, not across the retailer and state. So you'd have to exclude the product column using a filter, but that has some issues as well. So you can go filter, we'll select the same range, comma, and then we're going to exclude it by header name. So the header row B5 to D5 is not equal to product. So only include anything where the header is not equal to product. Right. And now we can do the unique around that. Okay. That gives us the results we want. However, if someone was to change the header name to say product name, it's not going to work. We have our product again. Now you can also use column indexes to include or exclude. So you open the curly braces. The first column is retailer within that range. So I want to include it. I use a 1. The second one is product. I want to exclude it, 0. And I want to include state. So I'll put a 1. Okay, and close the bracket. All right, and that gives us the result we want. However, these are hard-coded indexes. If the columns were to move around or to insert a column, then this is going to break and you have to update the formula. Now with Microsoft 365, you can also use choose colds function instead of filter, but again, that relies on you specifying column indexes. I'm going to show you how we can create these lists and make them dynamic. But firstly, where would you use them? Well, let's say you had a requirement to split your data across different worksheets or even workbooks based on the different attributes. So a retailer product worksheet or product state worksheets or workbooks. You could write a macro that could loop through these unique lists, filter the data on each one, and output the data to the corresponding worksheet or workbook. Another example would be to create summaries of your data based on these attributes. So you could aggregate your data based on whatever combination you want. Now I'm going to be putting together a video where I create dynamic summaries, which will use this approach. So be on the lookout for that. Now I do realize you can create those summaries using pivot tables, but they do have some drawbacks, and I'll talk about those in the videos as well. And we could also use these lists to populate dropdowns. Anyway, they're just a few examples. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do is to make the rows dynamic. That way we don't have to specify from and to. The way I go about that is to use dynamic named ranges. Now I do have a separate video where I discuss that in detail, so please check that out, but I'll go through it quickly here. So normally you can create a named range for any cell or groups of cells by selecting them, something like that, and clicking here in the top and giving it a name. However, that is not dynamic. It's just going to be the same as doing a from and a to. So let me create one. I'm going to call this data because it's on the data worksheet underscore retailer. All right. So I can use that anywhere. Data underscore retailer, and it gives me that list. All right. However, if I were to add another retailer, you'll see it doesn't automatically appear. And that's because it's limited to the from and to range when we created the named range. Right, so to create the dynamic named range, first thing we want to get is the first row and the last row. We want to make that dynamic. So the way I do it is I've got these hidden formulas up here. You don't have to hide them, but I do. The header row and the last row. So the header row equals row of the header row. Now I don't want to hard code a 5 because if I were to move that header, it's not going to change. It's still on 5, whereas my formula automatically adjusts. As you can see, it's automatically updated to 6. So that's what we want. We want it to be dynamic. The next thing we need is the last row, and that uses this lookup formula. Now I'm not going to go over this formula in detail as it is commonly used out there on the web. I also talk about it in many of my videos, including dynamic name range one. But essentially, it's going to look up column B for non-blanks and return the last non-blank row. Now, if your column is not in B, just change these references here. Now that we have the start and end rows, we're going to create the formulas for the retailer, the product, and the state. Now I've already got name ranges for these, so I'll copy the formula so we can get a better look. So this is the retailer one. I'll get rid of the equals, get rid of the highlighting. Excel will automatically add the worksheet prefix, so I'll just remove it to make it easier to read this formula. Okay. So this has two indexes. The first one is essentially the from. Then we got the colon. And then this is the to address. And the way it works is the from is going to return this row from column B. And the row is defined as C1, which is the header row, plus 1. Right? So this is going to give me the header row plus 1, which is the first retailer. Now, the reason I use the header row plus 1 is if I use the first data row, whenever we delete this row, let's say we're refreshing the data, we did a delete first, we'd end up with a ref error. So I can show you that. If I just did something like an index B, and let's go row 6. So this is using the first data row. Now if I was to delete this row or all of the data, but I'll just delete this row, you see you end up with a ref error because that row no longer exists. Provided you don't delete the header row, this should work. Right, so that gives us, this part here is going to give us the first data row, and I'll just show you that. Here we go, that's retailer 1. The second part is going to give us our very last retailer. So it's looking up, again, column B, and it's going to return the row specified in F1, which is the last row, right? Yeah. Retailer 4. Okay. And I'll just show you how this is dynamic. So let's go down to here. I'll add retailer 5 and you'll see it'll automatically add it. Retailer 6. All right. Even if I were to move the header down, it still works. We still have all our data. All right. So what you do then is you copy this whole formula, click on formulas, and zoom in for you. Click on formulas, name manager, click on new, give it a name, whatever you like to call it, data retailer, and then you paste that formula into here and click OK. Right? Then you can use that name range throughout your workbook. So I can just go equals, I've called mine NR for name range retailer. And that gives me our dynamic name range for retailer. And you'll do exactly the same for product and state. And all you need to do is give them their own name and obviously select the corresponding columns. So now that we have these dynamic name ranges, how do we use them to create unique lists? All right, let's go over to this worksheet here. Now, it might look a bit daunting, but it's not really. This is going to give me the retailer product combinations, and this is the retailer state. So this first one here, column B, is our retailer product key. So this is the same as you've probably done this in the past, where you go equals, here, ampersand, and that one, and you create a key. And then you just drag it down for every single row, but that's not dynamic. As you add more data, you have to go and drag it down, all right? So what I've done here is I've got the named range, so equals NR retailer, that's my retailer name range, ampersand, open quotes, and using a double pipe, you can use whatever delimiter you want. Close the double quotes, ampersand, and then NR product. So this is combining the retailer name range and the product name range. And it gives me an array. If you can see here closely, there's a blue outline. So that one formula will return all the retailer products in the data here. So it'd be the same as if I'd put it in here. Okay. Now each one of these corresponds one-to-one with the data row. So this is the first one, this is the second one, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. What I do in this column C is I now do a unique, I'll type it out for you, equals unique, and click on this. And because it's an array, if I put a hash sign, it selects every single row. Okay, and close that. And so this gives us our unique keys. All right, and what we can do here, if we want them in a particular order, I can do sort. Right, and we do it here. You don't want to sort this because, as I said earlier, this corresponds directly to the data that we have here. So if you were to sort this, it would put it out of sync with the data. You can sort this because that's going to be used for the lookup, and it's just going to tell us what order to output things to. And that's what we do here. So we're going to use this list to create a separate retailer and product. All right. So here I've got, I'll type it out again just so it makes it clearer. So we're going to do an X lookup. All right, we're going to look up this with a hash sign. So it's going to do each row one by one. Okay, we're going to look for that in here in our keys. hash again to look up every single row. Okay. And then what are we going to return? As I said, this is the column B is in sync with our data row, which is our named range. So I'm going to put the named range here. Okay. And if it doesn't match, we'll return blank and then close that. All right. So that gives us our unique retailers from the combination. Now I want it to be proper case, so the first letter is uppercase. So wrap the proper around that whole thing and it gives us this. And then we do the same with the product. Okay, and I'll type that up again. X lookup. All right, we're going to look up the key again, hash. We're going to look for this key inside here, hash. But I want to return the product for this one. So again, NR product. That's the name range for product. Okay, and blank if not found. And close that. So this gives us our combos, unique combination list. And the beauty of this is I can move the columns around in here and it won't affect it. So I can do an insert, come back to here, and we still have our data. Okay. I can even rename this to product name and it doesn't affect it. I'll still have our combination. All right, I'll just put it back. So that gives us retailer product, and we repeat the same for retailer state, or if you wanted to do product state, or all three of them, or whatever columns you have. So you just build your key using the named ranges, concatenate them. If you wanted to do all three, you would concatenate all three. NR retailer, ampersand, pipe, NR product, ampersand, pipe, and then the state as well. Right? And then again, you do your unique on this whole list down here and sort it if you want. Similar thing, we do our proper X lookup of our keys here in column H and look up the values in column G, which is our keys, and return our retailer name range. So that one is the same as the one in column D. State is going to be very similar, except instead of having proper, I'm using upper to force uppercase for states, but it's the same idea. We're looking up our unique keys inside our keys here and return the state named range. Now I do have another method of doing this, but it does have some disadvantages. So what I've done is I've created another named range that does the uppercase and the proper first. Name manager, zoom in. I've got a product proper, retailer proper, and a state proper. And I'll just show you the retailer one. Yeah. All right. And I'll just put it over here. So that just is doing proper of the retailer named range that we already created before. Right. So I do have to do that here first. And I do the same with the product in our product. If I wanted to use the proper one, which I have up here. So if you look up here, or you can see it here, in our product. All right. So in our product underscore proper. Now, if you didn't want the proper case, you just wanted the basic one, you could just use the named range. And then here we just do our sort unique. All right. So here we can do sort from retailer to product. And because we've got the our ranges here, we can use the from and to. So B for hash is the retailer and C for hash is the product. Okay, so it's not going to pick up anything in between in our data. So if I was to come to here, we've got retailer product. If I was to insert that, it doesn't interfere because where this unique is using these ones here. And we do the same with a state, right? So I just have, again, the retailer, the proper version, and the state one. And with that one, I did upper of NR state. And these are the same. We're going to do a unique of the retailer and the state and then sort it. Now, this is a little neater. The problem for me though is it returns an array of 2 columns. So now the disadvantage of having an array that spans multiple columns is when it comes to doing lookups, you can't specify the specific column. So let's say X lookup retailer 2 inside the retailer column. Now I don't want to do this because that's not dynamic. That's a from and to, but we can use the array notation. So D4 hash gives me that whole thing. There's no way that I could say, just give me column 1 within that. Well, there is, but it's quite convoluted. So we have to do index. If you've got Microsoft 365, you can use choose cols. D4 hash, comma, 0. We want all the rows, but we only want column 1. All right. So look for retailer 2 in column 1 of that array. And return index D4 again, hash, comma, all the rows of column 2, which is the product. So we want to return the corresponding product. Okay. So that works, but it makes your formula convoluted. It's also got hard-coded column indexes, which is not dynamic if they were to move around. If you use choose cols, it's the same story. You need to specify column indexes. Again, not dynamic. If you look at this original method, it doesn't have that problem because the retailer, the product, the state, they're individual columns. So I can do a lookup, again, retailer 2. I can select that one, hash. It's only 1 column, and I can return this hash, and that's it. It gives me the returned product. So it's neater and it is also dynamic. If we were to introduce extra columns, these would automatically adjust. So that's how you create unique rows from selected columns that may be consecutive or not. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future videos. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.